The reason scholars don't think that Christians were persecuted in the 1st century CE is because persecution is about identity. To persecute someone, you target them for some aspect of their identity, here their religious identity, and then you deliberately go out of your way to harm them or to make life difficult for them, to discriminate against them. So in order for Romans to be persecuting Christians, they definitely need to know who they are. And we don't have any evidence that the Romans knew the name Christian until the 2nd century. That's not surprising, because it doesn't seem like Christians were calling themselves Christians until the last decade of the 1st century CE. Paul refers to followers of Jesus as followers of the way, and otherwise, sort of whether or not they were ethnically Jewish or Gentile, as just sort of Jews, part of Israel. Jesus never uses the term, and in fact, the label only comes up on 3 occasions in the New Testament, in the book of Acts and in 1 Peter. And both of their books have now been dated by New Testament scholars to the 2nd century. We have a lot of Christians in the 2nd century talking about how they are being unfairly attacked just for the name Christian, but we don't have anyone in the 1st century doing that, especially not during the reign of Nero, who is supposed to have targeted Christians for exactly this. In case you're wondering, well, why should I believe this professor from England with a confused accent and a minor speech impediment, I can tell you that it's not just me who thinks this. If you're interested in the name Christian, I can't recommend enough an article by David Harrell in the Journal of Biblical Literature. And since I published my book, Myth of Persecution, Princeton classicist and ancient historian Brent Shaw has also come on board with the idea that the Neronian persecution was a myth, in part because he recognizes that Christians weren't being called Christians. Obviously, if Christians weren't being called Christians, they weren't being targeted by the Romans, even if they might have fallen afoul of legislation for other reasons. But as you'll learn some other time, that didn't even happen until the 3rd century CE. If you want to learn more about this, you could read Shaw or Harrell, or you could take my lecture on didascaloid.com.